Greetings. My name is Erica Rose Jeffrey, and I'm so pleased to be welcoming you to this lunch series, which is a joint session between the Arts Health Network Queensland and Dance for Parkinson's Australia as part of our mini festival. Now, before we go any further, I would like to invite my colleague, Marian Wabke, who is also a very important member of the Arts Health Network, to offer an acknowledgement. Thanks, Marianne.
Thank you, Erica Rose. Gambadaru, good day, good afternoon, in the language of the Turrbal people, and welcome to you all. Before we start, let's take a moment to prepare as we shift from the inspiring and uplifting program that we saw this morning to our lunchtime series with a presentation from the extraordinarily creative Jessica Olding. As the Arts and Health Program Coordinator for St. Vincent's and Northside Private Hospitals, Jessica stands confidently in the footprints of our dear friend, the inspiring Fiona Forrest, who established this incredibly challenging and critically important role. Jessica is genuinely an emerging elder, eminently qualified to nurture, develop, and continue the legacy of dynamic programs from her partnership and client-focused philosophy. I invite you all to take an audit of your body in this moment, to put your feet on the ground, feel the carpet, the wood, the support structure beneath your feet, and the earth underneath, supporting you and that structure. Take time to breathe, relax, and settle into this next inspiring session. The location where I'm joining you for this meeting is the land of the Yagara and Turrbal people, its custodians. Now, I wish to acknowledge the land, air, ocean, and virtual spaces that all of you are located in as you attend today. I wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, its First Nations people, recognizing the challenges that continue and the sovereignty that was never ceded. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and those emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present. I acknowledge my old people who I believe are here with me today. They bring with them an excess of 70,000 years of collective knowledge and wisdom. And I believe your old people and ancestors are here with you, making available an incredible collective bank of knowledge and wisdom. I wish to acknowledge and pay my respects for all those present from our Arts Health Network Queensland lunchtime series. Thank you, Erica Rose Jeffrey, whose leadership and inspiration is so deeply valued. We will miss you, Lincia. I'm sorry to hear you're not well today. And thank you to all those connected with this network. We are here to listen deeply and mindfully, to celebrate the innovation and outstanding work of Jessica Olding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marianne, for that very thoughtful acknowledgement. And we very much appreciate the key role that you play as a leader within our Arts Health Network group, but as well as within the state of Queensland and nationally around arts health and creative well-being. So thank you very much, Marianne. I'll just share a little bit about the Arts Health Network. So this is a community group that is made up of practitioners, organizations, researchers, people who are working in community, in clinical settings, in research settings. And we come together around the idea of making the work of arts, health, and well-being that's happening already in Queensland more visible, and also advocating for more opportunities for people to both engage in arts, health, and well-being work, but also to access it, to look at it from a strategic level and in terms of how organizations are implementing these kinds of programs, and hopefully looking at how we can work together across the state to really make some impactful change. I am co-chair of the group with Lynn Sear, the Arts Manager for Children's Health Queensland, who unfortunately is not able to join us today, but sends her regards and best wishes for this lunch series, which is a series that happens once a month, showcasing the work that's happening across the state. And today we have the wonderful Jess Olding, and I'm going to pass it right over to you. We'll have some Q&A at the end, which you can do through the chat, and we'll do a bit of facilitated discussion. Thanks so much, Jess.
Thank you, Erica Rose and Marianne. It's a really lovely introduction. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you all today. Just to tell you a little bit about what the program at St Vincent's is, the Arts and Health program. Now, just make sure you can see that okay on your end. There you go. Okay, so the Arts and Health program at St Vincent's runs across our two private hospitals in Brisbane, the Kangaroo Point campus and the Chermside campus. I'm employed by St Vincent's to work 10 hours at each site of work, so a week, so 20 hours a week towards the arts program, and we try and offer a diverse range of programming for people who want to participate in the arts, but also want to engage in it passively. So we have temporary exhibitions, we've got a permanent art collection that's on display, we have patient-centred programs like an art trolley, art lending library, live music, meditation videos. And as Marianne said, I've inherited a large group of this from Fiona Forrest, who has done a wonderful job. And I'm working at building those programs, have them built up over a series of years. So one of my favourite things about working at St Vincent's in the arts program is just how much people engage with it. So the purpose of the program is to support the social and emotional well-being of the patients in our care, but our hospital community more generally. So patients, staff and families are all really pleasantly surprised to see arts in the hospital space. And what I find is often people are compelled to send me feedback about the program. I see my job as creating a positive change of state for people who are experiencing some kind of stress or trauma while they're under our care, and their caregivers and staff as well. So this is a comment from one of the staff members at St Vincent's Brisbane, our Kangaroo Point campus, and they've said that's always a talking point and helps to enable staff to get to know their patients better. So I find this anecdotally as well. If I'm walking around the hospital, I'm lovingly referred to as the art lady, and I can't move artwork without people making comment about it, which I think is a really positive thing. I thought I'd run through in more detail some of the offerings. One of the partnerships that I'm really proud of is our co-funded partnership between Arts Queensland and St Vincent's Health Australia for the Stairwell Project, live musicians in hospitals. So the Stairwell Project is run under Jugglers Art Space, and the idea is that we provide patients and the hospital community in our care with access to professional paid live musicians to perform within the hospital space. Now, through our co-funding relationship, we're able to offer 3 sessions at each site per week at the moment when COVID isn't interrupting the access to the hospital. So they're 2 to 3 hour sessions a week, and the musicians roam throughout the hospital space. What I often find happen is that the more staff become aware of the musicians, then I'll get referrals. So it'll be, a lady on one of the wards really loves to sing. Next time a musician's in, can you please send them up to her? And that's wonderful. I'll always gladly send a musician to someone for that one-on-one performance, because they have plenty of time to perform for everybody, but then there's nothing quite like that hitting on the person who really needs that in that moment. You can see here a couple of photos of the musicians playing live. So I really love the one in the middle where one of our staff members asked to give Lockie's handpan a go. A lot of people haven't seen a handpan, it's a drum. So she jumped on and gave it a go and played some music herself. Over here is on the other side playing the guitar is Jordan. Now, you can see there's a bit of a crowd starting to gather around him, and shortly after this photo was taken, one of the patients actually said to Jordan, you know, are you able to play my favourite song? I can't remember what the song is at the moment. And Jordan responded by saying, yes, absolutely. And they played together in the foyer. And what we find after the musicians have come to play is the nurses report less buzzers and just a general goodwill around the hospital for the rest of the afternoon. So the impact moves far beyond that direct performance, and we find that it creates that positive change of state throughout the day. So we had this beautiful feedback from a patient at Northside. It was lovely to walk into the ward and see a young man playing acoustic guitar outside my room. What a lovely initiative that made a hard time seem doable. And that last line to me sums up everything that we're trying to offer here through the arts program, is just to make a hard time, take the edge off a really hard time. Okay, so we commissioned a research project with Margaret McAllister through the Central Queensland University in the early pilot stage of this program. And you can see that there was largely positive feedback. We're looking to do more and more formal research like this to substantiate what we're doing here. It helps on lots of different levels. It also helps me understand that what we're doing is working. Okay, so St Vincent's Health Australia has a permanent art collection. Each site owns them separately. So I'm in charge of managing the Brisbane collection and the North Side. They're significant collections. A lot of them need more documentation attached to them, which I'll talk about. And it's growing each year. So we continue to acquire work. So here you can see we've got a range of different artists that belong to the collection. We've got, some really significant works, and then we also have work by emerging artists as well. To help document our collection, we've partnered with the Queensland University, the University of Queensland Art History Department. The students are coming in once a week through a formal internship, and often they'll stay on as volunteers within the program. Now, what they're doing here is they're moving through our collection slowly and documenting it into a database, but also trying to document the narrative and the history behind both the collection, but then the hospital also. And hopefully we also get an insight into some interesting local Brisbane history. Students are doing a wonderful job, and the internship structure works really well. Now, we also offer throughout the hospital a range of temporary exhibitions where we work with emerging and established local artists to exhibit in 26 different spaces throughout the hospital, and they change over twice a year. So there's 2 lots of exhibitions they'll change over in the middle of the year. Now, the artists generously loan their work to the hospital, and it will appear all throughout the hospital in wards, foyers, corridors. It's a pleasant surprise for people moving through a hospital ward, particularly where they have long stays, to see the artwork change over. Also to have something else to engage with. We also sell all of the work that's on display on behalf of the artists, and we do have a regular art sales through there. So here you can see an example of some of the artwork on display. On the right-hand side is the outside exhibition in the public foyer at Northside. And it's just exceptionally well received. We find that walking into that busy space at Northside, directly in front of our admissions, having the artwork there, and then, if we're lucky, some days also a live musician in that same space, it takes people out of the immediate stress that they're feeling about going through the admissions process and the natural stress that people feel through that. We have an art lending library at Brisbane. Now, the reason we have this at Brisbane only at the moment is that people tend to have a longer stay there. We're one of the largest providers of palliative care. And the idea behind the program is that we have a library of artwork reproductions where while people are in our care, they can select artwork for their own walls. Now, we have volunteers that support this, and they'll move around twice a week and ask people, are you still happy with your artwork? Would you like to change it? Particularly wanting to chat with new people that have come into our care, but also revisiting people if they've been there for a long time. I love the engagement that happens here. So the volunteers have told me what will happen is that people will say, you know, they'll go on an informal wait list for an artwork, and they'll say, you know, when she leaves, I want her artwork, and they'll say, oh, damn, that one's taken. So people really engage with the experience. With the art collection, I'll also target that offering for people. So if we don't have something within the lending library that meets people's needs, you know, sometimes through counselling or through our spiritual care services, I'll get a referral to say someone's particularly interested in horses, for instance. So I'll look through our collection and see if I can hang something from our collection in their room. We have an art trolley that's starting back up again. This is one of those programs that has been on hold through COVID and needed a significant redesign for infection control, but we're just about to relaunch it, which is exciting. What we have is a trolley full of art materials and activities supported by volunteers, and those volunteers are trained by a professional practicing artist who's designed the activities. They'll go around to people's bedsides and be able to work with them on projects for those that aren't able to leave their rooms or are more comfortable in working on their project in their room. Now, the arts program also focuses on supporting our Reconciliation Action Plan goals. It's something that I work very closely with my manager, the executive manager for our mission department. We're both very passionate about using the arts to further our Reconciliation Action Plan goals, and our annual NAIDOC Week exhibition is a good example of that. So it's run throughout the hospital for a number of years, but it run formally as a partnership with Griffith University for the last 3 years. You can see the catalogues there. This year's exhibition we had a really great result from it. So we've had the highest participation, the highest amount of artwork sold, and the most people attending a launch. And I'm working with Griffith to try and build in more professional development for the artists for next year. So we're hoping to build on the success of that program to work in some more professional development opportunities for the artists. We also work on special projects. We're going to run this again next year, but for the first year we had a National Sorry Day artist in residence come and paint live in the hospitals, one at each site across 2 days. And the hospital commissioned those artworks, so the artists were paid for their time when they came to present and for the artwork. The awareness of National Sorry Day was really significant through that process, and then the opportunity to see an artist paint live was really rewarding for a lot of the staff and visitors, because it's something they may not have seen before. Okay, so we do this through partnerships. I have 12 dedicated volunteers that work within the program. So I partner with our volunteer coordinator in that, but our external partnerships through Queensland Ballet. We've put together some beautiful seated dance videos. The University of Queensland to document and record our permanent collection. Griffith University for our NAIDOC Week exhibition, and Jugglers Art for the Stairwell Project, live musicians. So that gives you a bit of a rundown of what the program looks like. I thought it might be a good time then to open up to questions.
Great, thanks, Jess, so much. So many different layers to the program that you have at St. Vincent's. It's really wonderful. And so many ways of getting the community engaged through different pathways to participate, to share, to connect with the artwork.
That's right. Yeah, we're more so than in any other space, we're really conscious of having arts programs that are available for people to engage with passively if that's what they need in that moment, but to participate in as well if they're looking for that connection or to learn a new skill while they're there.
I had a question to start, maybe just before we have questions from the participants. If you'd like to ask Jess a question, just type it into the chat on the live stream and we'll make sure to discuss it. So my question is, if you could talk a little bit about the difference that maybe you've experienced or things you've thought about in terms of differentiating between, say, curating an exhibit in a gallery space, sort of a traditional gallery space, and what it's like to curate an exhibit in the hospital space.
Yeah. Absolutely. The difference really is that in our space, everything we do, the patient is at the centre of it. So, you know, as opposed to a gallery where you might say use the artwork to challenge somebody's perspective on an issue or to foreground a perspective that needs to be seen and talked about, the art is playing a very distinct role, and that's to nurture or create positive diversion or both. Usually I find that scenes of nature, so things that people can't access while they're in hospital, they really fill their bucket while they're in our space. So scenes of Brisbane even, you know, scenes of being at the beach, accessing places that they can't be in that moment. Generally things that are calming, and you know, it can still be really interesting art. It doesn't need to all fit one mold, but anything that's confrontational, it's not the space to do it.
I think you're sort of just thinking about the space, the audience, and that idea of frequency also in terms of how frequently people will see an artwork. Yeah,
that's right. And the offering at each hospital is actually quite different. You know, the North Side's a big, busy hospital, and it's a little more akin to curating artwork for an airport where people might, you know, they'll go through there quickly, won't stay for long, but then they might return there 6 months later. So they'll notice the change. Whereas at Brisbane, people are there for quite a long time. You know, we might have people stay with us at Brisbane for years. So I aim to change that over more regularly, and people get quite excited when I do that.
Fantastic. A couple of questions have come through. We might start a question from Yvonne Miller. Hello, Yvonne. Any exciting plans for 2022? And what's your favorite project to date?
Oh, that's a good question. 2022 will be all about hopefully stabilising a lot of the programs that we have. COVID's interrupted our environment quite a lot. It has for everybody. But because the hospital closes to visitors, that also means it closes to volunteers. Programs very heavily supported by volunteers, and it closes to musicians. So, you know, they're contractors or visitors to the hospital. So I'd like to see a lot of the programs that we have that are fantastic stabilised, and also to see our trolley back up and running. I'd like to see what else we can do, you know, build on our partnerships that are already existing, and, you know, see what else is out there. So if anyone has any ideas, send them through.
And do you have a favourite project to date?
My favourite project? Oh, it's very hard to choose. The Stairwell Project partnership is just wonderful. You know, I experience it as a consumer because when I walk into the hospital, you know, I might forget that we had a guitar player coming on Tuesday morning and go, oh, isn't that beautiful? that and the exhibition program, because the regular changeover is very meaningful for everybody.
Really, really nice ways to experience the artwork as well, both the sort of different mediums.
Yeah, that's right. And it's I mean, our program it feeds off feedback. So those programs are often the ones that we get the most feedback from. I mean, the lending library is pretty special too. They're all really great.
Great. A couple more questions. Thank you for that response. So from Associate Professor Sally Butler, she says, thanks for mentioning the UQ students. Can you tell us a little bit more about staff engagement with the art displays and events?
Yeah, the staff are, I was surprised at how engaged the staff are with the art displays and events. Events are a little bit more tricky because everyone's busy and working shift work. So when I'm planning things like that, I need to plan around tight breaks and the scheduling of staff. But we have a corporate Facebook page, which is just a closed group Facebook page that I post everything to, and I'm always blown away at the level of feedback from all areas. I'll do silly fun things on it, like I'll say a pop-up art trail at Northside and take a photo of an artwork and say who knows which artwork this is and where it's located, and people respond and get involved. Or they'll say, that's my favourite artwork. I see it all the time. I know where it is. So it's overwhelmingly positive. The staff are quite direct too, which I like. If the artwork isn't hitting on what it's meant to be doing, they'll tell me immediately, and my job is to respond immediately, particularly if someone's finding artwork unsettling. It can be surprising what is unsettling. A lot of people in our care might be confronted with their own end of life. So an image that doesn't look confrontational to me or somebody else curating it, it can be quite confrontational. So if that happens, we just take them down or relocate it.
Thank you. And I think just following on from that a little bit more, a question from Marion Wabke around feedback from the staff around the potential for them to be more involved in art and creative activities for their own well-being. And also, has there been an increase in the need with the added pressure around mental well-being from COVID?
Yeah, most definitely, particularly in programs like the Lending Library. More and more, I'm trying to set up a referral process for staff to get in touch with me when they're chatting directly with a patient. I work quite closely with our spiritual care. We fall under the same department. But we're trying to talk about ways that we can organise to have referrals come through to me. So for instance, I'm talking to someone or they're talking to someone in a room that really loves music. Can you send someone to me, as I was saying before? Or, this person has had a particularly positive experience with boats and sailing. Do you have sailing boats that we can put on their room? All of these things become really important in that moment. It's also a sense of agency. When partnering with staff, yes, most definitely. I know when Fiona was at Brisbane, we worked with staff for to make a ceramic installation, and they built the ceramic works, and we're wanting to run one at Northside. The challenge being that with staff that work on shift work, having enough time for them to access that. So we're even talking about maybe sending the artists up to the wards rather than asking people to come down to us.
So sort of managing where the art is happening then.
That's right. Yeah, there are a lot of practicalities where, I kind of naively think, well, yeah, we'll put this art activity down here in the foyer and everyone will come. And then, people will say to me, I can't come, I'd love to, but I'm busy and I only have half an hour for lunch. So all of that is, part of the challenges of the environment, and then it's a design issue in my mind, we can just shift the design so that more people can access it.
Oh, great, thank you. See another question that's come up. How do emerging artists find out more about how to get involved in St. Vincent's programs or to be considered for acquisition into the collection?
The emerging artists can apply through the Outside In exhibition. That's the best way to initially get involved with the arts program. So the Outside In exhibition is through an application process, which gets reviewed by a range of different stakeholders. So, we'll talk to people who are formerly patients to get their feedback on how they would experience that art on the walls in the wards. I'll run it by my volunteers, particularly my art history volunteers at UQ. They're really helpful. And then if we feel their work's appropriate, then we'll contact the artist and then we can organise to have an exhibition. The acquisition process, it happens more sparingly, and usually it's based on feedback. So, we've had the artworks we have acquired, it's usually because the majority of the people in the space, when I go to take it down, say, please don't, we love it, where are you taking that? And then we'll make a decision as to whether we choose to own it or not.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions. I might go ahead and ask those as well. So you mentioned in your presentation some of the research that was done with Margaret McAllister. And so I was curious in thinking about the kinds of programs that you're offering now or that you hope to offer. What things might you be interested in investigating or partnering with researchers to look into?
Yeah, I would like to know more about the impact of different types of art on people. So we know it, and there are studies that have been done on it, I suppose, but, why do people overwhelmingly feel more relaxed by landscapes and seascapes? And is it something innate about that view that you can see? Or is it the colours in it? So, to try and diversify our offering and, I've just gone to say how we're not pushing the boundaries for people, but to exhibit more diverse artwork in ways that's still performing the role of nurturing people. And our participatory program. So I'd like to see some research around our art trolley. One thing I'm really curious about is, as a lot of these programs are tightly funded, we have our art trolley. It doesn't perform the role of that you would get through an art therapist. It's not a therapeutic exercise, it's a diversional exercise. So I'd like to see whether, what is gained or lost through having volunteers man the art trolley as opposed to, say, having a paid professional artist. Maybe tease out the difference between a therapeutic engagement and a diversional engagement.
Thanks, Jess. A question has just come through, and it's talking a little bit about, if you can maybe talk a little bit about more the role that the volunteers play, and maybe teasing that out a little bit as you just started to mention around the difference between an arts engagement activity and something that's more a therapeutic approach. And sort of what's the process for assessing if volunteers can be involved? What does it look like if you're a volunteer working in the program? At St. Vincent's, yeah.
The volunteer labour is something that we're very considered about. I have a volunteer coordinator that I work closely with, and we have two cohorts of volunteers that we work with broadly. Of course, people fall in from other categories, but usually it'll be student volunteers who are in the early stage of their professional development and needing to skill build. Or we'll have people who are retired and wanting to do something, re-enter the workforce in a way that they do meaningful work, but without the, say, pressure of being in a paid work environment. And I want to give back to the community. To be a volunteer role, it needs to be something that the hospital could go on without that role. So that person can't be loaded up with too much responsibility that they feel overloaded within their capacity. But it also needs to be meaningful enough that you want to come and do it all the time. So we work at, the design of the volunteer role is dependent upon what the person's trying to get out of it. So with my interns that come through UQ, the design of that program really is centered around what gaps, do people usually find when they graduate, having not had any professional experience outside of their course. So I try and do things like getting them, putting together exhibition labels, writing didactics, organising the collection and registration. Whereas our other volunteers were, the program volunteers, like the Art Lending Library, a lot of the volleys in that, they're looking for the social engagement and that sense of purpose and meaning while they're there. So we try and roster on a group of volunteers all at the same time so they can stop and have morning tea together and really create a sense of community, and put the structures in place so that they're not taking on too much responsibility, because it can be quite confronting, the work that they're doing.
Thank you for that. And how do the volunteers themselves engage with the artists? Is that sort of a part of or are they two separate components in that way?
They're largely separate, although it depends on how much the volunteer wants to, really. I have a volunteer that comes through with me on Fridays at Northside, and she helps me hang exhibitions. She's an artist herself, and she's really passionate about the artwork, and you can see that together. So what I'll do usually with that process is take a bit of a curatorial backseat and say, what do you think? How should we hang it? Usually the artist has already dropped off their work, but if I know that she really loves an artist's work, then I'll try and organise to have them there as well. Or I'll organise artist visits for when we're hanging their work so that the volunteer can meet them and they can chat. I think they're largely separate unless the volunteer wants to be involved.
Okay. All right. So now I have a question that's sort of a big vision, dreaming question. So imagine that you have suddenly been given the opportunity to design a hospital based around the arts and health program. What are some of the elements that you might include based on the experiences that you've had so far, and looking at what that might grow to in the future? And this is just dream big.
Yeah. Well, you'd have art interventions at every point. One of the biggest things about a hospital, I think, is how disorientating they are. So, in my ideal world, you'd have art interventions as soon as, which I know some hospitals do. You do art interventions as wayfinding as soon as you enter into the space. So, coupling art and design together. I would have a dedicated space to dedicated quiet space to engage in art. But yeah, geez, if I had my ideal world, you would just have the opportunity for an arts program at every turn, in a surprising and delightful way, that doesn't feel obtrusive.
You never know when that call might come, so we're going to dream a little bit. There's a question from Gordon, and Gordon is asking, what are there programs like this, happening in public hospitals? Sort of talking about that a little bit. What might be done in public hospitals?
Yeah, there aren't that many people that do this role, but the people that do it are do a fabulous job. So I suppose Lynn Sear is a perfect example of someone who works within a public hospital, for the Children's Hospital. She runs the arts program there. I'm not sure about other public hospitals in Brisbane. I know that the Stairwell project is represented at the Royal Brisbane Hospital. They've got a very strong partnership. I'm not sure how their art objects are handled there. But yeah, you'll see roles like this pop up around the place. So I was just chatting with someone in the Flinders Medical Centre in Adelaide. They've got quite a significant arts and health program. Their video starts by saying something like, "We've got a small team of 10 staff," and I almost fell off my chair.
So there are great examples, like you mentioned, the Children's Hospital. I just had the honor of going to an event last week, which was also a collaborative project with QUT School Design around redesigning the 6th floor. And you walk out of the elevators and you're immediately in this rainforest, and there's all this amazing interactive wayfinding, as you mentioned, Jess, to reconceptualize that space. So things are happening, and I think that we're working in colleagues like this to make that work more visible and make more opportunities available.
Yeah, and as you're touching on there, I think that in the ideal world, you'd have it be totally multidisciplinary. So not just art on the walls, which is fantastic, but literature, poetry, theatre, dance, opportunities to engage with all of those areas of passion. They have their unique challenges, but that would be wonderful.
A couple more questions. So we have a few more minutes, a couple more questions here. For Marion Wapke, is the funding provided exclusively by St. Vincent's? And wondering, what political interest there might be in these kinds of initiatives, and understanding that the Federal Arts Minister has requested a parliamentary inquiry into health-based arts in hospital environments.
Yeah, my role is I'm employed by St. Vincent's, so the majority of the funding for the role is staffing it, and then the program-based funding, we do a lot with a little. The majority of it comes through St. Vincent's, and then I apply for small community grants here and there. We were successful with the Arts Queensland grant for the Stairwell project, but what I find to be the best avenue there is to be a co-funder rather than to seek funding, a co-funder for a smaller partner who's trying to build the program, rather than, say, seeking funding for a program that I've designed myself. But yeah, the majority of the funding comes through St. Vincent's, and all I would say is that we're very frugal.
I think that, and there is, I think, this growing interest in arts, health, and well-being from a leadership level. I mean, I think that if we look at other examples internationally, such as in the UK, and the work that was done there through their parliamentary process around these kinds of initiatives as well, or some of the things that are happening in the US around arts and health, around sort of public health and connected even to the pandemic, I think there are these growing interests from leaders, and so to continue providing these great programs, but also to expand the resourcing, I think is important. That's right, yeah. And,
I'm not sure of the best model for how that works. Really, the long and short of it is I'd love to pay more people to do their job. So our volunteers that are part of the program, the important thing about our volunteer roles is they don't replace paid employees, but the role is pared right back to be something that a volunteer can offer. I'd like to offer really comprehensive programs by paying professionals to offer that service within the hospital, but all of that comes at a cost. So yeah, a range of different funding streams I think would need to be required for that.
Yeah. And thanks Yvonne Miller for posting a link in the chat about the entertainment precinct at Queensland Children's Hospital. And what a wonderful initiative and project, and to see that realized. So you can see a few of the photos through that link and learn more about the project as part of the bigger initiatives that are happening at the Children's Hospital in partnership with other programs. We have another question here, which is from Kelly Bray, who says, I'd love to see an arts health unit incorporated into the Cert for Leisure and Health qualification. Are there any collaborations with the creators of syllabus content underway being considered?
Well, not formally at the moment, but it's certainly something that I'm trying to build towards. You know, I suppose the most formal example of that is through the UQ internship. That's a course that's offered to the students, and they're receiving course credits to come in and do that internship program. As far as the being a formal unit, yeah, I mean, that would be absolutely wonderful. I think it has a place in an arts degree also. Having that overlap between arts and health, you know, the working within this space, you need to be an arts administrator, but then you also need awareness of the health context as well.
Yeah, and I think that there are more programs emerging. So for example, there is a Bachelor of Creative Arts in Community Wellbeing at University of Southern Queensland, which is a relatively new program. And there are conversations happening in many places around this way of providing further training, making those links between perhaps some of the academic training or schooling, professional practice, and how do we actually work in these kinds of environments. And I think that there's from my experience, there's that work happening both from, say, the arts side, but I think that there's also an interest from the health side. So for example, we've had some conversations with our colleagues in New South Wales within the health system around how do we also help to provide education, information, and resources to the health practitioners around these kinds of programs and incorporating them in so that it becomes holistic from both sides. So definitely many things happening in that space and hopefully more to come.
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to see what comes from that. When I was talking to the Flinders Medical Centre, the Arts and Health program there, the one I mentioned earlier, they actually fall under, they're employed under allied health, and they're embedded in the clinical structure. So they get patient notes and they make notes on patients, and they have formal arts interventions prescribed, which I thought was a really exciting idea, and kind of what we're trying to move towards with the participatory programs, or the ones that are designed to target individual patients, rather than, say, the exhibitions, which is more of an arts management role.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's so many more things that we could talk about within this time. I love just having the opportunity to have a chat with you and to learn even more about the program than I knew before. We might start to bring it to a close. So if folks want to learn more about the program at St. Vincent's, we can share some links in our resources, but is there a suggestion that you might have, Jess, about getting in touch or learning more about the programs?
Yeah, the best way to do it is to get in touch with me directly. I'm more than happy to share anything that we're doing here. If you want to come for a site visit, I can walk you through. If you want to ask me any questions over email, our website has just been redesigned recently, and I'm hoping that I'll have a very nice, shiny arts and health page to share with everyone very soon. So that will be a great resource as well. But in the meantime, just get in touch and I'll respond.
Great, thanks Jess so much. Well, we are coming to the end of our session, and hopefully it's maybe just a start of further conversations, collaborations, and possibilities. And I just want to give a big applause. Thank you, Jess. I really appreciate your time and sharing your expertise and experience during this lunch session. For folks who are interested in the Arts Health Network, you can join our Facebook page, which we will pop a link in the chat around our Facebook page. And feel free to join us in a future lunch series. We've included presentations from the Queensland Ballet about their brain injury, Ballet for Brain Injury program, programs around looking at music with working with mothers from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds with Dr. Charumani. So a wide range of different programs each month. And so we look forward to connecting with you through the Arts Health Network in the future, if that's of interest to you. A big thank you, Jess.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks for your time. It's great.
Yeah, thank you. As a bit of housekeeping, we're just going to take a little break for about 5 minutes, well, until 1 o'clock Queensland time. So great chance to get a snack, a beverage, stretch your legs, and join us back in the live stream console, where we'll get to hear from Linda McIntyre and hear more about singing, voice, and music. So I look forward to seeing you there.